Greetings and welcome to our 5G webinar today as we open the door and dig down into the nitty-gritty of the topics digitization and network agility. Later, we'll be joined by two esteemed speakers to help us really understand what that means from both the vendor perspective and the operator perspective. But for now, without further ado, I would like to introduce the Director General of the Cellular Operators Association of India, Lieutenant General Dr. S.P. Kochhar, to make his opening remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you all. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you to this discussion, 5G, opening doors to digitization and network agility, which has been jointly organized by COAI, Nokia, and IMC Studio. As you are aware, of late, the telecom industry has been managing disruptions from customers caused by companies which have set new standards for seamless online experiences, forcing industry to actually redefine the interaction models with customers like Uber and Netflix. There has also been business model disruption due to technologies like AI, big data, and the Internet of Things, which are redefining service delivery and value addition models, amongst others. And of course, the urgency with which the industry requires to upgrade existing technological infrastructure has been vastly catalyzed by the COVID pandemic, as we all know. Also, to get ready for the 5G environment, I am proud to say that the telcos are now conceptualizing their networks with virtualization and cloudification, which allows for an unprecedented level of cognitive automation, enabling networks to conduct intelligent, agile, and responsive service operations. I visualize that the rapid increase in capabilities and computing power of machine learning technologies would actually pave the way for networks that are self-aware, self-optimizing, and self-healing. Automated networks will soon be a reality. In coming years, we will see automation getting smarter and cover end-to-end network elements, including backhaul automation, and will evolve to create the self-aware networks capable of handling complex end-to-end optimization tasks continuously, autonomously, and in real time. To their credit, Indian telcos are already investing into these emerging inventions, reinventions, and digital transformations like zero-touch service models and satellite networks like Open RAN, along with building greenfield IT stacks and enabling digital native scaled customer experiences. Having said that, the aim of the organizers have always been to facilitate a forum for participants to deliberate and discuss new ideas and measures to enhance telecom infrastructure and business models that encourage networks, especially suited for, amongst others, IoT, data centers, data analytics, cloud computing, and homegrown digital platforms and applications. This could be of more relevant than today, given the emergence of 5G, which is just around the corner. I take this opportunity to thank all our panelists and partners for being with us today and making this program very thought-provoking. I am keenly looking forward to an exciting discussion, so stay tuned for expert insights on 5G, digitization, and new age technologies. Happy participation to all of you. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Hello, and now to the question and answer session. In order to do this, I need some guests to join me on the webinar, and I'm very privileged to have two of our top local executives to join the call today. So first, from the operator side, we have a representative from Reliance Geo Infocom. He is very well known in this part of the world. Please say hello and welcome Shyam Mardikar. Hello, Shyam.
Hi, Nicole.
Hello. You come to us with the title of President and Group CTO Mobility there for Reliance. So very esteemed platform on which to bring in also our vendor side, where we are joined by Mark Atkinson. He comes from Nokia. He hails from the head of Radio Access Network, where his latest title is Senior VP. Mark, welcome.
Hi, Nicole. Thanks for having me here today.
Good. You're my pleasure. So who am I? I'm beaming in from Australia. I am part of the global research and consultancy firm known as Omdia. As my accent gives away, I too am based in AP, in particular the Australian market, where I head up 5G monetization, strategy, and pricing. So between the three of us, we have an exciting agenda ahead. But let me first paint the scene so that we can unpick this very exciting topic of digitization and network agility. So the telecom space, it is evolving. And that means that the operators in this space also need to keep abreast of pace and change. And one of the things that keeps them up at night is how to progress in this 5G world from a connectivity provider into a smart experience provider. Of course, 5G is the facilitator for that type of experience, thanks in part to its lower latency and higher throughput capabilities compared to 4G. But I think it's fair to say it's a fairly tough roadmap, and we have a highly disruptive new value chain to wade through for our operators. Not only do they face increased volumes of video and data on their network, but they've got to navigate things like workload volatility. And if we put our futuristic glasses on, there's a lot more millions of potential connected devices to come on stream eventually. So we want to deep dive into this transformative journey. We want to unpick these keywords of virtualization and cloudification and ask our operator expert why he is insistent that he needs intelligent, responsive, agile networks to bring his business case to fruition. But Mark, I'm not letting you off the hook. We need to know what the vendors can bring to the table. There's a lot of emphasis from the operator community about keeping it real, simplifying this deployment of the networks. You guys need to have at the fore of your mind the acceleration of bringing new services and apps to market if the telco community is going to realize their dream, so to speak. And Mark, I'm not letting you off the hook on this thing called return on investment. So we'll look forward to putting you under the spotlight too in terms of you facilitating the operator journey. So that's where we're going. In short, what is the new digital network deployment going to look like, and how are the operators going to tap this space? What is the role of the new operator? So to kick me off, I think it would be remiss not to ask Shyam to tell us and bring us up to speed. In India, where are you at in terms of the 5G rollout, development process? And I think I'm pretty safe in saying you're a long way from mainstream. So put it into perspective for us, if you will.
Thank you, Nicole. And as always, a privilege to be part of the session. So I think you rightly actually articulated the fact that as India, as a country, we are still kind of a step behind from a time perspective on the launch of 5G. We already have 150 plus countries on the globe who have a 5G live network in their respective nations. But I think a couple of things which we are doing together as an industry to get there, not only in the right time from a customer perspective, but also at the right scale. We come as a country with certain very specific differences when it comes to launching a new generation of the network, specifically regarding the scale and size of the network, especially regarding the diversity of the infrastructure requirements which we will have to do it. And the fact that since we have classically, conventionally being a late starter in this whole digital world, we have only kind of picked up on the digital footprint in last 5, 6, 7 years amongst the top. I think we will depend for some time to come on the wireless technologies to kind of fulfill our broadband requirements wherein 5G comes. Getting there, I think starting with spectrum, first and foremost, we believe that sometime soon in next few quarters, we will have spectrum auctioned by the government, especially C-band. The current visibility is on the C-band and a bit on the millimeter wave, 28 to 30 gigahertz. I think these will be two starting staple brands which is going to hit us from a 5G perspective. So what we are doing together is trying to create all the preliminary readiness around infrastructure, around planning of the network, around consumption models which our 5G customers will pick up, around the end-to-end business case. You alluded to ROI as well. And these are seriously capex intensive exercises, specifically looking at the deep fiberization it will need, especially looking at the densification of data centers or pushing the data centers towards the edge. But more importantly than all of this, the design should entail the programmability of the network readiness going forward, which is one thing where 5G significantly differentiates itself from the earlier generations. So it is not only about the nuts and bolts on the brick and mortar side, it's also nuts and bolts on the software side, on the design side of the whole value chain, which we are building. This includes right set of amalgamation of IT technologies, of cloud technologies, of data center readiness, and connecting them with the conventional telco infrastructure, getting all the three. And I keep on saying this past few months, is 5G is one amalgamation of what I call as holy trinity of communication: connectivity, compute, and storage. Erstwhile, till 4G times, we were okay with the connectivity portion, but now it's a step up. And all of that coming together in a very, very cohesive manner is going to take care of what we call at 5G at scale to serve a billion plus population which our country hosts. Getting there.
Yeah. And Shyam, that all feeds into our automation super theme here today. And Mark, I need you to unpick that a little bit for me, please. When I think digitization, I think automation, I think AI as an enabler to that. And AI, we know, opens up some really interesting things like predictive maintenance, but it also opens up some things that maybe our audience hasn't thought about, like energy efficiency and the like. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so very, very nice introduction by Shyam, and I can say on a global level, of course, we've learned a lot in the past couple of years. We launched the first 5G networks in Korea and US back in early part of 2019, and of course they were at that time an extension of LTE. Now with 5G, we're moving towards standalone networks, which will bring the real promise of 5G services and capabilities. So when we talk about automation, we've of course been doing this for a long time. There's traditional automation, which you can put in a context of taking manual tasks and automating them via machines. So this is the kind of nuts and bolts or the basics. Now we're looking more and more towards AI-based automation. And this will, of course, serve two purposes. It drives down costs and it improves task quality, so the effectiveness of what we get. And AI and then machine learning are really key to deal with the complexity of the 5G networks that we have today. So in Nokia, one of the things we made a choice on earlier in the year was to combine our product and services organization for mobile networks into one, exactly because it's hard to separate now the things that we need to do. And when we look at digitalization, I can give a few examples. For instance, in Deploy, we use AI-based workflow optimization tools. In TSS, Technical Support Services, we engage so-called digital assistants, which have access to extensive libraries, live network data, and can make then decisions themselves. And then you're getting more and more benefits. And we can talk more about that as we go through the discussion. But then it comes to a few things. Firstly, you need extremely powerful compute. Back to Shyam's point, you need a lot of processing capability to support those cognitive functions within the radio access network. And then on top, you need things like SON, self-optimizing networks, which bring automatic troubleshooting, configuration management, automatic optimization, self-healing. So this context-aware capability within the network. So plenty of exciting things to come.
Yes, and I think another part of that automation story has to do with the OSS and BSS layer. Kind of a little silent cog turning around in the background there, but a very, very important one if those operators are going to realize those new business cases. So Shyam, in terms of your network planning, do walk us through your OSS BSS transformation plans there, if you will.
I think when you alluded to OSS BSS, Nicole, as a silent cog, you could not have been more right. And I think sooner than later, all of us together as operators, as equipment providers, have realized, and I believe, I mean, if I have to put a timeline towards it, it is the latter part of the last decade, around 2015-16 timeframe, when what we call as the conventional products, the radio products or the core products or the routers, the capability of products has become less relevant than our capability to manage them. I can compromise with a product, maybe 5-10%, but I cannot compromise with my capability to manage that, because the scales at which we are operating and the flexibility of the network and the elasticity of the network architecture which we are trying to operate, I think it becomes paramount important that OSS is really kind of seamlessly integrated, not only, but is very intelligent and intuitive to manage the network functions. So I think the relevance and the value of OSS systems, including BSS, are going to step up big time going forward in this. And this concatenated with the fact that Mark alluded to, getting some kind of intelligence or self-learning capability. You can call it AI, you can call it machine learning, but long and short story is the amount of telemetry and instrumentation interfaces which these products generate now, it is absolutely impossible to kind of manage and orchestrate them in absence of a very intelligent management system. So I think OSS, BSS are becoming totally depending on the big data which is feeding them, distributed across the network layers, distributed still a very open API base where they share data, the relevant data in real time. In fact, there's been a big leap from this big data concept to right data. And that is, I think, more or less relevant to what telcos are doing right now. What kind of instrumentation you create with the products and how do you manage it? And then take it to the whole life cycle of the customer. When you roll in the BSS portion from rating, provisioning, right up to the whole fulfillment cycle, I think this becomes one seamless stack, which now takes care of product as well as process as well as customer experience.
I agree.
Sorry.
And Mark, one other thing we can't compromise on is security. So 5G networks, it's a big thing here. Are they less secure than 4G? Why do we keep talking about this?
Yeah, it's a great point. And of course, security has come a lot more into focus with 5G wireless networks. So there's been a lot of discussion around the world. And why is it? Really, because over time, we're expecting perhaps trillions of devices, wireless devices, which will be serving the whole planet to be interconnected. And this, of course, opens up possibility for security threats when you're thinking about national infrastructure all being connected over 5G. We already have a lot of public safety networks in the world using LTE, but it goes a a level further, Industry 4.0, where you have a lot of machines within factories and power stations, whatever, all interconnected. So the importance is key. 5G networks are implicitly designed to be more secure than previous networks. So we're improving everything as we go. But at the same time, 5G brings more intelligence to the edge of the network. And as a result, you could say we're opening up a broader area or surface area for attack by potential hackers or backdoors or something like this. So then it's really key that we're bringing security solutions across the network. So you have the different so-called planes, the data plane, the control plane, the user plane, and so on. And you need a good level of security across the layers, meaning how the layers interact with one another and within the layers themselves. And so a simple example would be something like IPsec, that most people generally know what it is, and that was prevalent in previous technologies as well. But 5G takes that a step further. So it's enhanced, it's made stronger as we move into 5G as well. So whilst there are more needs, more threats, of course, we need to provide more solutions.
Absolutely. And we also need more business cases. And Shyam, you're in the spotlight. If we're going to do all of this wonderful connected device stuff, part of that story is the slice, the network slice. Tell me where your thoughts are at as you're about to leave the gate in terms of the enterprise slice, possibly a consumer slice even, and how many slices are you looking at?
See, Nicole, I think this is one of the most interesting and exciting aspects of 5G, whereas this technology is kind of enabling what you just spoke about. And if I look at slices, I think if we step back and ask our question, why is the whole genesis of slicing has come from the fact that 5G service suite will not be a one-size-fits-all. We are all aware now because of the diversity of the technology and the capability of the technology. It will be more a customized, a bespoke kind of solution. In fact, there are talks about customizing it even at a retail level on n is equal to 1 customer perspective. But having said that, I mean, enterprise side is a very, very clear and classical example. And if you have to customize a solution, it is logical that you also dedicate only those many resources that are needed to service that particular service or customer, which means that you slice the network not only from physical infrastructure perspective, but also from programmable resource perspective. That makes you use your resources in much more optimal manner, much more kind of shared and pooled manner, much more productive manner. And it also gives us a very good customer-led control towards the resources which they are using, so then they can scale at ease or they can use it at ease. This specifically comes about the Enterprise 4.0 suite. Around vertical solutions. We are talking about vertical solutions in conventional sectors like education or health, or in agriculture if it comes to countries like India, of course towards end-to-end production and manufacturing, and then deep automation of the customer processes. And pandemic has told us that unless you digitize the overall stack, the enterprise stack, it is very, very difficult for you to operate. So there will be slices from infrastructure perspective, there will be slices from network resource programmability perspective, OSS, BSS perspective, so that as a customer, I only get to see what is required of me, and I only get to pay for what is being requisitioned by me, rather than trying to kind of build a very, very generic business case. So I think this will be very, very exciting to see. Number of slices, I think Mark spoke about trillions of devices. We know there are hundreds of thousands of enterprises out there, depending on the way we approach the market. But I think as a technical person, my brief is very clear. Number of slices are equal to the number of customers or number of solutions which we need to give. That's the B end and far end of it.
Right, good. And to enable your network slicing, we're really coming back to that pivotal point of network flexibility. We've been talking about that for a while, haven't we, with the NFV, SDN starting point, but now we're throwing out some new words like Cloud RAN and Open RAN. Mark, where are we at? From my understanding, it's not one shoe fits all. Yes, there's some nice benefits that come with all of this. cost savings, that network flexibility, faster speed to market of services. There's also an incremental cost. Put it in perspective for us.
Just searching for the mute button. Yeah, there's probably an hour worth of conversation in that question alone. So I'll try to be succinct and give some key points. I think firstly, it's important not to muddle all of these things up. So Cloud RAN and ORAN, Open RAN, are two different technologies which can coexist. They can also exist separately from one another as well. And Cloud RAN is much more of a technology evolution of the existing radio networks, which are out there. So moving baseband compute from purpose-built hardware into the cloud using x86, for instance. So that's an evolution which we expect as we enable more and more use cases on the edge of the network. ORAN is there to encourage a multi-vendor ecosystem. For instance, a Nokia baseband with a third-party radio, which probably won't result in any increased network innovation or performance, probably even brings some complexity into the network, but has the opportunity to reduce costs, because then you're having a broader supplier base to make vendor selections out of. So when we look at the two of them, Cloud RAN has its challenges in that we need to, of course, have the infrastructure in place, data center infrastructure, very strong transmission networks, and so on. So it's an evolution, but something we're going to see a couple of years into the future in most markets. So it's nothing which is just around the corner. ORAN is more about maturity. So how hard or easy it will be over time to bring different vendors, building blocks, which typically came together as separate entities. And then a big question about who's going to do the integration of those and make everything work properly. So a skilled operator in R&D like Reliance Jio, they can perhaps do it themselves. They can pick like building blocks off the shelf and be accountable themselves for the end-to-end performance. Other operators are looking for vendors to take that off their hands and say, we will have a lead integrator as well as individual subcomponent providers. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for the coming years. There's a lot of maturity that needs to happen to make those technologies perform as the existing technologies are performing today. And then we will see how to get increased benefits. So then talking about NFV, SDN, slicing, where we're really then enabling those new opportunities. And a lot of this hooks together, as Shyam was saying, that slicing is about business cases, but also can enhance security, coming back to your previous question, because then you can have different slices for different purposes. So banking slices are different from gaming slices, for instance. So there's a lot we can bring into the networks as well.
And Shyam, over to you. You have the microphone. What's your response there to Mark? Was he on the money?
I think it's big open and new opportunity for most of us out there. So I think the whole complexity which was erstwhile kind of I don't want to use the word controlled, but kind of managed by a very, very small set of people who had the skill set, because not only it was capital intensive, the R&D dollars needed to stitch it end to end together were immense. And Nokia, for example, did a fabulous job over the years to create a radio stack which is really world class and which has been servicing all the generations so far. But what has happened is when the programmability has increased, and again anchoring on Mark's point earlier, it is very easy now to create an independent full stack solution with an underlying hardware taken from somebody else, a cloud layer taken from somebody else, and then population of the software stack of the network functions on top of it. It's not easy, it's complex, but it is getting much more better and much more intuitively connected now as we go in this whole 5G era. Now we are slightly fortunate at Reliance Jio, where we have a big team of core native technical set of engineers who are able to devise these programs of their own. In fact, we do claim to have our own full stack 5G solution, which is in compliance with release 16 going forward. And we do plan to not only deploy it in our own network, but use it as one of the stacks, which will be our USP. So I think it has given us opportunities. It has broken a lot of cost barriers. It has given rise to a lot of innovations, and hence I think it will be only good to see how this whole programmability kind of leads on to new service cases, new use cases, and new product capabilities.
Okay, well, let's put Mark under the spotlight again. In the intro, Mark, we talked about the operators' potential need for faster agility, better time to market, and they needed a bit of emphasis on this thing called ROI. Tell me, what is Nokia's catch cry? What's your key takeaway for operators in terms of helping plug some of these big challenges?
Yeah, well, like this is nothing new, right? So since the beginning of 2G, we've been focused on how to all make money and provide maximum benefit to the end consumers. Now the end consumer has changed over time. So at the beginning, it was just people with smartphones. Then we went to data devices, and now we're talking about like computers and machines talking to one another over the wireless networks, and then enhancing what we can do with the network. So things like public safety networks have become more and more important across the world. So we're seeing now in many of our customers globally, they're looking for ways to expand what they can do with the networks in order to address new segments. So whether it's working together with industries, and we're also engaged deeply in what we call private wireless, which is then providing either dedicated networks or even slices to mines, for instance. So you're in Australia, where there's a huge demand for connectivity there. And previously, those connectivity solutions were perhaps based on Wi-Fi or Tetra, which, of course, 5G is providing something which lower latency, faster throughputs, more secure. So enabling additional revenue streams, of course, is great for everybody using the same network infrastructure that we have. And for us, we are seeking continuously to drive down cost. So we need to drive down product costs so we can provide better prices to our customers. And for instance, most recently, we launched our new SoC system on chip baseband and RF products. They're providing more capability than ever before at more competitive price points than ever before. So it's a win-win for ourselves and the operators and ultimately the consumers.
And do you think, Mark, that operators have moved beyond the broad verticals that they can tap, and that we're now getting to a point where they're starting to speak specifics like mining, for example? Have we got past the top level? Are we in tier 2?
I believe so. So if we look at our customers around the world, then everybody's interested in addressing new segments. And you even see a lot of operators now, they've opened up their own enterprise divisions, which they didn't have before. So in the past, an enterprise division was to sell like cell phones and tariff plans to enterprises. Whereas today they're looking more how they can provide enterprise solutions and often managed solutions, coming back to the automation and service part as well. That these enterprises or campuses or mining corporations, they don't want to buy equipment and figure it out themselves. They want somebody to come and do it for them. And so I've seen a lot of the lead operators, and Reliance Jio included, are really looking at a number of different industry verticals with dedicated solutions. So another one is like docks and ports, because again, you have a lot of custom solutions which you then need to bring on top of the network, and applications in ports that may be very different with container tracking and so on from what you would want in a mining area. So I think there's a lot of things there, but also a huge amount to come. So we're at the kind of tip of the iceberg now, and standalone 5G networks are what enables all of that, because a lot of these things, they're not about the speed which 5G provides, but they're about latency and about slicing.
Perhaps I agree. And Shyam, when the floodgates for 5G open in India, it will be a race. It will be the typical battle for the lead. Why? How are you going to differentiate your service? Differentiation's always been the bugbear, but how do you see differentiation? You can speak consumer, enterprise, or both.
See, it's thankfully it's an easy question to answer, Nicole, and I think it's easy because of the simplicity of the approach itself. If we understand our customers better, we will be able to serve them significantly better. I think that's the tagline which I'm going. And again, anchoring on what Mark just said, I think our engagement with enterprise customers has already moved from a admin or bulk buy kind of CIO engagement when he was buying minutes and SIM cards and GBs from us, to an architecture and technology led engagement where we are talking about how we can help the CIO organization with our customers, the enterprise, the banks or the manufacturing units, or even the FMCGs for the example, to kind of literally forklift their current digital stack. And I am choosing my words carefully. I'm not calling it an IT stack. I'm not calling it a telco stack. It's the digital stack where they need to go, be it their sales force, be it their manufacturing processes, be it their people management, be it their deep technical understanding of whatever they do in their respective domains. I think that partnership, will enable us, that understanding will enable us, with people from those domains embedded into our teams, our people embedded into their teams, to continuously evolve. I believe this decade, and we've just kickstarted this decade, I think this will actually showcase how the planet evolved from a very conventional, discrete mode of operating, and pandemic has any which way pushed it fast for 2, 3, 4 years, fast forwarded it. I think it will definitely change, and unless we kind of get our hands dirty with our enterprise customers, their ability to digitalize it this fast will be impossible. And then when you look at the retail customers, the B2C, the smartphone folks or the FWA folks, I think there our recipe is simple. The coverage has to be ubiquitous, the quality has to be consistent, the availability has to be 100%. So as long as I get the network where I need, when I need, and to whatever extent I need as a customer, I am happy. And as an enterprise customer, if you understand what I'm trying to give you, I am happy. So between these two pillars, I think we would surely be able to take a pole position in this 5G race.
And Shyam, in terms of the consumer and handset affordability, do you think they'd be happy today, or a lot more needs to happen to get a smile on their faces?
I think it's a natural process, Nicole. But I think one big change which we are seeing from the way 4G evolved and the way 5G evolved, I think the lag between device availability and affordability in 4G, specifically to a country like India, where we started with TDD, is significantly ahead in case of 5G. Also because there's been a lot of 5G all around, especially in our part of the world. You talk about Far East Asia, Koreas and Japans, or China for that matter. I think the device availability and affordability is fast getting to the point where to copy you, I think customer will be happy to get them onboarded with that.
Well, that's a big issue sorted for you then. So Mark, just as we enter the home stretch, one network thing we haven't talked about is the potential for smaller cells to play a much bigger part of this network story this time around. Fill us in on where we're at in terms of that piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I used to run small cells in Nokia for many years. I'm very passionate about this area. So when we look at 5G, firstly, we're talking about relatively high frequency bands. Of course, there can be some reuse of the existing LTE frequencies, but typically we're talking about C band, like 3.5 gigahertz, and then all the way upwards into millimeter wave. And the characteristics of those bands are very broad amount of spectrum, meaning high speeds, but very small or relatively small propagation, meaning smaller coverage area and quite difficult to penetrate through buildings, walls, glass, whatever. And so that's inherently leads us to believe you will have more and more need for small cells in 5G, because a lot of 5G services are for indoor users, whether it's people inside a stadium or a transportation hub, in an enterprise, in a factory, and again, the machine-to-machine piece, which is there. So we see that we'll firstly need a range of small cell options. There needs to be very competitively priced solutions for the enterprise, even for the home. Then there needs to be broader capacity solutions such as millimeter wave, where you need a huge amount of capacity, like a stadium, lots of users, lots of uplink traffic, typically because people are taking videos and then uploading them into the cloud. And so we see there's a definite case for small cells. Of course, on the flip side, we're going to have the small cell challenges, which we've always had, that you need to find sites. Deployment of small cells is typically quite expensive relative to macro sites. Transmission needs to be available, whether it's a microwave or a fixed transmission link. So we've learned a lot. We need to keep learning, and part of it will come back to our very start point of automation. So you cannot plan and deploy and manage a small cell network in the same way you do a macro network. It has to be a lot more intuitive, low touch, and the ability to take products and get them onto target sites as fast as possible.
And Reliance, is small cells on a priority for you at this stage, or is that sort of phase 2?
No, I think there, and I'm kind of happy about this whole architectural kind of paradigm. Right now, even in 4G scenario, we are significantly ahead of competition when it comes to our share of small cells. In fact, we have a whole portfolio to the part which Mark alluded to, with pico cells, femto cells, micro cells, and even big cells deployed in a macro manner in a different architecture. So that HETNET portion of architecture is already kind of tried and tested and deployed in 4G, and this will significantly kind of get expanded when it comes to 5G, specifically because of the need of the frequency to be closer to the user and our ability to use the street furniture now in a slightly better manner. The challenges are obvious, and I think Mark did hit on the nail on the head when he said that deployment challenges need significant automation, significant infrastructure support from power and connectivity perspective, because these are two big bottlenecks to densify the network. But I think it is now in 5G scenario, I believe small cells are more of a necessity than a luxury. So we don't have a choice but to go ahead with this kind of architecture.
Okay, good. And Mark, take us home, if you will. AP came out, all guns blazing. We very much led the 5G global scene. Are we still ahead? Has the rest of the world sort of caught up or nipping at our tails? What's your take on things?
Yeah, of course, Korea was incredibly fast in launching 5G, and they're already like in phase 2 of moving to 5G standalone networks and so on. Japan uptake is starting now. China continues to densify, especially the low band now, to get 5G coverage out into the networks. But of course, other parts of the world are moving fast as well. So the three big operators in the US specifically are all moving towards broader nationwide deployments. There's a lot of spectrum which has been auctioned over the past 9 to 12 months, which will result in mid-band being available to all three of the operators. And then, of course, Europe, where Europe is typically a little bit slower than both Asia Pacific and the US with adoption of the newer technologies. But you find 5G signals in many places already today in Europe, and especially our corporate home in Finland. 5G is already pretty well built out and continues to be so. So I think the initial race is over now. We're moving from getting a 5G signal onto the phone to improve quality and performance and making 5G perform a lot better than LTE was performing. And now we can start to move towards the real 5G. So far, everything that's happened around the world has been really about making 4G work better. So higher throughputs, leveraging all of the capacity layers that both 4G and 5G can bring. But now we're moving into that exciting time of standalone networks with low latency applications and network slices and all of these use cases we discussed. So many years ahead of us, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So let's let the games continue. So, gentlemen, I've had a really good time. Your insights have been open, transparent, and absolutely fantastic. I thank you so much for giving up your time to be with us today. And I'm sure you're going to get a lot of follow-up questions after this. So enjoy your afternoon, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Shyam. Nice to meet you.